you've talked about essentially what Scott Guthrie's been doing in the development space to kind of have rapid web development sitting on top of services which could be today on premises and tomorrow in the cloud or some sort of hybrid combination.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, our real goal is to build a development an application platform that makes developers more productive than anything else on the planet. Make it simpler and easier to build applications. And whether that's being used for customers internally to run their own business applications, or with their own internal systems to run external facing websites, or whether that's in the cloud running on a public cloud such as Windows Azure, we want those to be very compatible for people and make it easy for people to build these applications, and make it easy for people to start with an application in-house and be able to transition it in the cloud or vice versa.
So you think that that developers are going to take to Azure, or put it this way, what reasons are they going to first approach Azure?
The biggest reason that people will approach Azure is because it's Windows Server. And if you're a developer that's familiar with .NET, if you're a developer that's familiar with building on the Windows platform, and you have application investments in there, we're working to enable developers to build that in a public cloud with Windows Azure. The one thing that Windows Azure brings that's very important beyond that is it is a place where we are invoking and helping to simplify the next generation scale out programming model. I mean, today most business applications, most websites have not been built in a way that makes them easy to scale out as needs increase. And there's a set of services that a platform, an application platform and development tools can provide to make that much simpler. That's what we're doing with the combination of Azure and Visual Studio. And in a lot of senses, it's what Microsoft does. I mean, if you go back 15, 20 years ago, it was really hard to write a Windows GUI application. We created Visual Basic to make it easy. Today, it is possible to write a scale-out application, and companies like Microsoft and Google and Yahoo and a few others are doing that effectively. But the skill set that's required to do so is limited, and it's hard. We're going to focus on making that easy to write scale-out applications with Windows Azure and Visual Studio.
So, Silverlight, I think, is an interesting development for a number of reasons. Not only externally in terms of its, bringing rich internet applications to a cross-platform solution, but also internally in terms of the impact that it's having on, or potential impact that it might be having on product groups inside. Mm-hmm. You want to talk a little bit about what you see as going on there or not?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to. I mean, Silverlight to me is one of the most exciting things that's happening, certainly in my organization, and I think at Microsoft as a whole. I mean, what we've done is we've taken all of the learning that we've amassed over the years in terms of building high productive development solutions, and the learning that we did in terms of how to build a very rich graphical user interface, and compacted it into this little tiny runtime, this 4 megabyte runtime that enables this incredibly powerful set of solutions from within the browser, and with Silverlight 3 outside the browser as well, in a cross-platform sort of way. So enabling people to build solutions that run on the Macintosh and run on Windows, and then through our relationship with the Moonlight team and open source to be able to run on Linux as well. It's been kind of fun to help Miguel and his team as they've been driving an open source implementation of Silverlight in the form of Moonlight.
You think it's acceptable to have something that trails by anywhere from 6 months to a year?
I think it is, especially because what you're seeing an open source piece of development that's created that will allow for Silverlight to move into all sorts of places where we can't see. And I just met with Miguel out in Boston, I guess 2.5 weeks ago, and I actually think the period of time is decreasing, and he's doing a great job of lowering the delta between those two things. And frankly, we're working hard to help him too. I mean, there's a lot of things that Microsoft is doing to help the open source community keep up and do things. I mean, one of the key things we did is for all the controls that we're releasing in the Silverlight environment. We're releasing those with a license that allows them to run in an open, we're providing the source code under an open source license and allowing them to run in Moonlight. So massive amounts of the investment that's going into the core framework for Silverlight is already written in an open source way that Miguel and his team can just make run on Moonlight. But I mean, the thing that's interesting is Silverlight has had acceptance and has generated a very strong amount of leadership in a couple of spaces. You know, sort of the first space where we've seen leadership has been in the video space and high definition video, where really it's a combination of the Silverlight runtime player, the runtime environment, together with the work that's been done in the server space with smooth streaming to really redefine the way video is done over the web. And I'd say I think the impact of this is going to be very dramatic for end users over the next few years, where we'll begin to see incredibly high quality, over-the-top experiences being delivered directly from a wide variety of websites to end users on their devices, on their PCs, on whatever device they're using to surf the internet, with effectively HD pixel perfect quality and the kind of user experience that you'd expect. I mean, one of the things that I find incredible is this new smooth streaming technology. You know, we now have live smooth streaming working, so that that you can have a server, one server feeding the entire internet from a live video stream, and have that experience being broadcast out in in HD with full record capabilities. Everything is all there. So if you want to go replay a scene, you can go back, instantly go back to that scene, and then go forward, and it works exactly like you'd want it to work. And the only thing is you start looking at this and go, well, what's the big deal? It works the way you'd want it to work. And then you realize that it just doesn't work that way anywhere else. Even though if you've ever watched the internet on the video, you want to go forward to a frame forward. You see buffering.
Sure.
It takes forever. This is instantaneous. And the other aspect of it is that the design, and this was really work that the server team did that's part of Scott Guthrie's group, the IIS team. What they did is they leveraged the entire HTTP CDN networks that people already have. So the CDN vendors, the content delivery vendors, they don't have to build a separate architecture to support the smooth streaming. So the servers that exist to do web caching, standard web caching on the internet that are being used for web pages, can be used for video. So to me, that's one of the exciting things that Silverlight opens up. There are others as we begin to see very rich 3D, high video, high graphics quality applications being built as well.
Well, the big question, of course, is, from a political perspective, pardon the expression, how do you get, will there be a Silverlight office, something like that?
What I think you'll see over time is major parts of Microsoft applications beginning to incorporate Silverlight into their experience. I mean, if you look at, for example, the web companions that Office is doing, they do use Silverlight in a variety of instances. So we're seeing that being used there. We'll begin to see Bing and MSN and our online properties begin to adopt Silverlight inside the set of things that they do. We already see some of that in a limited form in Windows Live. Mm-hmm. If you look at my business, which is less consumer focused, and we focus really on business customers, we are building interfaces that are web-based interfaces for our business servers using Silverlight. I mean, it's become pretty universal that the kind of experience we can provide, in this case a system administrator, is much better. We can write it much faster by using Silverlight. And as we begin to launch new services, we have a management service we'll be launching next year that's System Center Online that enables people to manage desktops through a cloud-based service. The entire user interface for that, from a management perspective, is all done in Silverlight. So and by the way, it's incredibly it's impressive because it's very fast and extremely responsive from an end user perspective. The kinds of apps that can be built using Silverlight have really, they feel like native Windows applications. They have that level of responsiveness to them, and then they're very rich, and yet they're browser delivered.
Well, the Netflix implementation brings a whole business to the Mac. I mean, that's
Right.
a big deal.
No, it's exactly that Netflix has been a key customer of ours that has taken and utilized the high definition capabilities that Silverlight delivers and enabled them to build a very rich experience, not just on Windows, but also on in a cross-platform way.
So, I'm sort of, excuse me, I'm sort of backing into a discussion about what we're trying to do in this so-called real-time space. Do you have any sense that real-time is something that's emerging, or is it just,
You mean real-time communications and collaboration? Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying? Well, I mean, I think it's very obvious that it's emerging in a lot of different forms, and I think it's still that it's such an emerging space that the exact ways in which it's going to be changing over time are fairly unclear. I mean, we see tons of interest in tweeting and Twitter and what's gone on there. We've built a pretty strong business around real-time communications within our Office business for business customers, and that is one of our strong growth opportunities. The interest people have in taking the combination of textual-based real-time together with voice and video real-time, whether it be conferencing or one-on-one communications, and bringing all of those things together into new experiences. An interesting one for me in this, in a business space, is there's been these emergence of very high-end video systems, whether it's telepresence or Halo, and the idea that businesses will have these high-end video rooms that can then connect to end users and work with people that don't have that level of equipment available, but can have a phenomenally great experience from their PC, from the phone, and from the camera and the microphone that they have on their PC, and interact together with those things. I mean, we recently did a demonstration of that, showing a high-end HP Halo room connecting with a UC system where people were using standard equipment that's just available as a part of their standard PC can participate in these telepresence systems. I mean, that's the kind of thing that is an example of the sort of thing that we'll see, and I think that will emerge much more in the consumer space too.
The real question for me is whether Microsoft can move aggressively into this space, as a sort of center of the desktop type of application. I mean, you've got email, you've got Messenger, you've got a bunch of separate, not particularly integrated tools, and along comes this sort of mainstream message bus that people are starting to use for a combination of marketing and promotion and internal communications, and there are things like Yammer, and there are a bunch of ways to take this apparently trivial application and turn it into something that will provide real business value.
Well, there's no question. Like I say, it's something that's emerging and is having a massive impact in the way people communicate and work together. I'll say though, I mean, I think if you look at communication systems and usage within business, I mean, Microsoft has had a massive impact with new systems like SharePoint. I mean, the usage of SharePoint has absolutely exploded within businesses, and it's rapidly become the standard.
Why do you think that is? I mean, SharePoint, when it started, seemed like WebDAV, basically. It didn't seem like much of anything.
Because of the versatility of what you can do with SharePoint. I mean, the reality is, it's a classic Microsoft thing where we put tools in the hands of end users where they could build a collaborative solution for their team or their environment and have that together in literally just a few minutes and very instantly allow people to work together more effectively. And at the same time, SharePoint allows for broad business solutions to be built. I mean, you see two sorts of usages of SharePoint very broadly inside business. One is for broad team collaboration, where you have, in Microsoft, there are literally hundreds of thousands of team sites that have sprung up on SharePoint. And that process where companies begin implementing SharePoint and these sites mushroom up within the organization, that's what people find again and again. And at the same token, people use SharePoint businesses use SharePoint as a standardized portal for how business information is shared out. So whether it's business data or whether it's information about the HR and financial things for companies, SharePoint has become the standard way that businesses expose that data to their end users. And it's this combination of viral spreading within the organization and the end users, together with the ability for companies to implement it more broadly, that have, I think, made SharePoint so popular.
So you think that, and I hate to use the term twitting or Twitter to sort of summarize something that I think is a lot bigger than that, but do you see that as being integrated through SharePoint?
I think you'll see features of that nature going into SharePoint. I mean, over time. I mean, you'll see much more the ability for people to have these real-time communications, and this cases, these little tweets where they're creating threads that have short have a whole set of short comments.
And if you take Silverlight and add that to that.
Well, what Silverlight is an enabler. I mean, the way to think of Silverlight is it takes what you can do with the web today and makes it richer. And it does so in a way that's very broadly available and and can be built very quickly and very effectively. So, I mean, the kind of experience, you can get a certain kind of experience today with the web browser. With Silverlight, you can get a totally different class of experience. And there's a lot of value to that class of experience relative to the way it enhances the way people work with information. And, I mean, I think that's true in the consumer space. I think it's also true in business.
But why do you own Silverlight?
Because I own the developer team, and my team builds platforms. And whether that's server-based platforms in the form of Windows Server or SQL Server, or whether that's the set of developer tools in Visual Studio. In this case, Silverlight is built by the same team that builds .NET and also builds our web server. That's Scott Guthrie's team. And frankly, Scott just does an awesome job of moving his team forward and really deeply understanding what developers need and then building solutions that meet those needs.
Well, I think we're seeing this in the last mix, I think it was,
Yeah.
and the PDC, announcements about APIs and so on that were being released first for Silverlight and then followed up with WPF.
There are a few cases of that. I mean, part of it is WPF is on a release cycle that works with the broader .NET framework, so it's not quite as fast a release cycle as Silverlight has. We're trying to keep Silverlight on roughly a yearly cadence, so we're driving it very, very fast. We're very close to releasing Silverlight 3, and you'll begin to see Silverlight 4 before the end of the year. I mean, we've been actively working on the next release. So we literally have two different teams. We have a team working on releasing 3. We've got a team that's already begun on 4, and then they'll sort of swap and move forward. So we're focusing on doing things fast.
What are we going to see in Silverlight 4?
Well, what you'll see is more improvements along the lines of what we have today. So continuing to make the video experiences better. You'll see us broaden what you can do with Silverlight in terms of international support and things. If you talk to people who are trying to build business applications and reach broad sets of consumers, they want to reach consumers in China and in India and Thailand and everywhere else. So being able to easily support a broad set of languages. I mean, the way I sort of view it is Silverlight 3 is the mature, broad platform people can use to implement things with, and we think that's where we'll see very strong application adoption. Silverlight 4 rounds it out. It takes the next step forward and continues that process.
What do you think about HTML5 and the strategies that Google is employing?
Well, I think HTML I've always been a very strong believer in standards-based browsers and continue to advance that. HTML5, it has to get stabilized. I'll start by saying that because first of all, there's no clear definition for HTML5 right now. But what the world needs a very strong HTML5 that does get standardized, and we're going to be investing through our IE team in building a world-class implementation against that. The real key here is because it's a standards-based process, because it's a process where you've got a whole set of browsers that's building it, the speed of which that innovation happens is somewhat slower than what you can do with something like Silverlight.
All right. Well, I don't mean to end on this note, but I think that Silverlight has this interesting kind of positioning inside Microsoft that is starting to have the appearance of essentially the input to a web operating system. And that seems to be within Microsoft's agenda
Well,
on some level.
what's very much in our agenda is to enable people to solve problems that they can't solve before. To me, that the perfect example of that is this web streaming, where the idea of being able to do over-the-top HD quality web streaming, live, delayed, everything, all instantaneous user response. To be able to solve problems like that faster and get those to market quickly. I mean, that's to me the kind of thing that Silverlight's all about. You're right in the context that it is a broad platform, and the platform is going to continue to increase in its scope. But the goal here really is to make it easy for people to build solutions that they can't build today, and to deliver value to their customers, whether that's business customers or consumers. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it with Silverlight. There's things you can do in Silverlight you can't do anywhere else. We're going to continue to advance that lead that we have, and Scott is driving that team very fast to continue to do that innovation. And the key thing we've done with this environment is you've got 6-8 million professional developers that know .NET. And we're being able to take those developers forward and give them access to customers that they've never had before. And that's why I think it's pretty exciting.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Good to see you.